foreign policy and the monetary policy and the institutionalizing of the central bank, the Federal Reserve, we have gradually allowed our freedoms to be eroded and become dependent on the printing press instead of production and saving. So there's a school of thought which we have had to live with since the 1930s that actually frowns on saving. That's bad. You're supposed to spend your money and stimulate the economy. But what happens if the middle class shrinks and lose their jobs and they're too much in debt? How can they stimulate the economy? Well, the Keynesian liberal economists have an answer for that. Well, the government will spend the money. Well, where are they going to get the money? Raising taxes under these circumstances? It just makes the economy that much worse. Although we have an answer for that. We're just going to print the money. And what does that do? It destroys the value of the currency. A characteristic of a period of time when you destroy the value of the currency, it inevitably destroys the middle class. It transfers the wealth from the poor and the middle class to the wealthy. And what's going on today? The wealthy are doing quite well, and the middle class is shrinking. That has to be reversed. The great thing about our country, we were the freest. It was flawed even from the beginning, but we were the freest and the most prosperous. We had the largest middle class ever, and yet now things are changing. Our wealth is being consumed. We do not produce as we did in the past, and for several decades now we have maintained the appearance of wealth by borrowing money and printing money. But now this is all coming to an end. Something has happened 4 years ago. There has been an announcement by the marketplace that it cannot be sustained. We have to admit it. We can't keep lying to ourselves. We can't keep saying we can borrow and print and spend our way out of these recessions. And the world knows it. It's a worldwide phenomenon, and that's what we have to live up to. We cannot correct our ways if we put our head in the sand and deny what's happening. If we would only look at it truthfully and decide what needs to be done and come up with the right ideas, tell you what, it wouldn't take all that long. And that is what our campaign is all about. And that is what the country is really about. Samuel Adams said that what you really need to have changes is you don't have to wait for the majority to agree with it, but you have to have a very, very determined minority, a minority that is irate and tireless, willing to spread brush fires of freedom in the minds of men.
Yes.
We talk a lot about that, and it's associated with our campaign, but the campaign didn't invent that. This has been around, and it's been growing. It has been there. It's been dormant for a long time. There has been a remnant who has held it together, economically speaking and philosophically speaking, clinging to the values that the founders had. But they've been quieted because of the appearance that it's the wrong way to go, and the consensus was that you have to accept these interventionist policies of spending and intervention overseas, and the necessity for the federal government to tell us how to run our private lives. Well, that is all changing now because the remnant has done their job. They kept these ideas alive, but we have a new generation right now joining us with a great deal of excitement, spreading this message from with the internet, and believe me, they can't stop it. This message. It's not that they won't try, because they are continuing to try. They know the significance of the internet. They know that we will not get the information from the major news networks. Just take, for instance, one issue that I have not heard at once in all these 20-some debates we've had. One small question was brought up on an issue that should be crucial to all of us, and that is the National Defense Authorization Act. It is that they're concerned about, and they know the significance of it. and what this has been going on, and yet they seem to have put their head in the sand and think it's necessary. The National Defense Authorization Act has given the authority to the President to use the military to arrest any American citizens that he considers a suspect, deny him attorney, put him in prison, and hold him indefinitely. And of course, that has to be reversed. If we want to live in a republic and if we want to defend our personal liberties, it has to be reversed. But of course, there are a few other things that we're going to have to reverse too. There's a systematic undermining of our liberties since 9/11. Of course, 9/11 was a disastrous day, but we haven't explained it fully. We haven't fully understood it. We haven't changed our foreign policy. They still, many in Washington, would like you to believe that the only reason anybody would do us harm ever is because we're free and prosperous. That is not true.
That's not true. I know that.
And since 9/11, of course, within 2 weeks after 9/11, a bill was passed that had been floating around for several years. They wanted it passed, but 9/11 gave it an opportunity for those who would like to crack down on the freedoms in this country. So the Patriot Act was passed. And when the time comes that we restore our liberties and restore the Republic, the Patriot Act will be repealed. Has introduced the notion and codified the idea that any federal official and any law enforcement agent can write their own search warrants. Walk into our houses, look at our internet, look at all our financial records, look at our medical records without a search warrant. What happened to the Fourth Amendment? It has been repealed if we don't reverse this idea of the Patriot Act. I've often said that the Patriot Act was passed, and I had other members of Congress confess this was true. How could I vote against the Patriot Act under these circumstances? And they said it'd be so hard to explain it to my people back home. An individual told me that. I says, well, that's your job. Go back home and explain it to them why you do it. But the Patriot Act now has introduced the very visible consequence of that type of authority at our airports. If we as a people can sit and watch the pictures on television showing the groping and the x-raying and the undressing of 90-year-old women in wheelchairs, if we put up with that and tolerate that, there's something wrong with us, and the TSA needs to be reined in, it needs to be removed. The president approximately a year ago, announced a new policy. He didn't even wait for a law to be passed. He announced a policy that says the president now has the authority to assassinate American citizens.
No!
I mean, this is not quite believable, but it's happening. He's already assassinated 3 American citizens. But the person that was assassinated probably was no angel. But he said some things that sounded like he was antagonizing and promoting violence, which, quite possibly is the case. But that means he's a suspect. That means that he should be arrested and tried and convicted and then prosecuted and executed if necessary. But to declare by oneself that we can assassinate these people, I mean, it takes away, yes, you say, well, he was a bad guy. But that means that we become vulnerable to the same rule of law that punishes these bad people. Think how many bad people have been properly prosecuted. Did Timothy McVeigh just get assassinated because most people say he was a bad guy? No, he was arrested and given a trial. Adolf Eichmann was arrested many years after World War II ended. He was taken to Israel and was given a trial. The war criminals after World War II were given trials, but this pretense that we don't need trials anymore is a very, very dangerous trend. That is why we have to be very, very alert to what's happening. The good news, though, is a lot of people are waking up. The remnant, of course, is waking up, and the new generation.
Yeah.